Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So, before we start, can you please let me know if I'm clearly audible and visible in the comments? Please type yes if the audio video is fine. And let me also wish everyone a very happy Diwali. May the festival of lights guide you on the right path to success and let all your dreams come true. Perfect. So let's begin the discussion by looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have taken around 11 important articles. There are 8 topics that require a detailed, comprehensive coverage, both from a prelims and mains point of view, and 3 small topics that are relevant only for the prelims exam. So let's cover all these topics in a complete, detailed manner so that you don't have to go back and read the paper again. Before we start, I have an important announcement. If you're looking to enroll for our classes, this would be the perfect opportunity as Unacademy is offering the lowest prices ever as part of Diwali celebrations. You can now enroll for the 12-month subscription at just 17,999. That gives you access to all the live and recorded classes and the practice tests, as well as the study material and mentorship sessions. So those interested, click on the link provided in the video description and please don't forget to enter the code IAS English. This offer, I'm told, ends tonight. And if you want the PDF of the session, please scan the QR code, join our official Telegram channel. The PDF would be shared over here after the session ends. So let's start the discussion and look at the first article. On page number 12, we have an article related to elephant census, which was recently carried out between 2021 to 2025. The data of this elephant census has been published by the Wildlife Institute of India. This report can be very important for our prelims and mains exam. The status of elephants in India report was brought out by the Wildlife Institute of India on October 14th. So in this article, we'll understand the estimation methodology which is used to estimate the number of wild elephants in the country. We will talk about the history of elephant census and we will try to compare the data and the methodology that has been used. We will also understand the distribution of elephants across different landscapes in our country and understand which states have the highest elephant population. Finally, we will discuss what is the relevance of such census data. How does it help in the conservation of the Indian elephant? Now, please remember, Indian elephants are listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List. Its population is estimated to be declining because they face a number of threats from habitat destruction and fragmentation to hunting and poaching to the impact of climate change and global warming, plus increasing incidents of man animal conflict. So, all these risk factors are threatening the population of the Indian elephant in the wild, and they are listed as endangered, a threatened species on the IUCN Red List. So, talking about the Wildlife Institute of India, first let's cover the basic facts related to this institution because this itself can come as a separate prelims question. So, before we talk about the elephant census and the data, first let's cover these basic facts related to the Wildlife Institute of India. This institution is the nodal institution that was set up to pioneer wildlife research, to provide for training and as well as capacity building in the field of wildlife conservation. It was established in the year 1982 under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Today, it has the autonomous status. By 1984, it was accorded with the status of an autonomous institution functioning under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. It is based out of Dehradun in Uttarakhand, and its primary role is to focus on developing the scientific knowledge related to wildlife and biodiversity of India. It specializes in conducting wildlife research. It focuses on training programs and capacity building initiatives, which can help in training the forest officers, which can help in training the civil servants and the bureaucracy and the local communities, and as well as the conservationists as well. It partners with global organizations as well. It also partners with volunteer organizations, NGOs, and takes a direct role in implementation of few of the conservation programs. It brings out some important reports. It is the lead organization that conducts the elephant census and publishes the status of elephants in India report. So, with this, let's talk about the history of elephant census in our country. The Indian subcontinent has always been known as the land of elephants. At one point, the Asian elephant roamed across the length and breadth of the Indian subcontinent, from Pakistan to Myanmar, from Jammu and Kashmir all the way to the southern tip of India. Even in the island territory of Andaman Nicobar Islands, you find a very healthy elephant population to be present. But today, their range is largely restricted to some of the landscapes in our country. With rising population, increasing urbanization, and destruction of forests, the concentration of wild elephants is today restricted to some of the protected areas and the corridors around them. For example, we have Western Ghats, Eastern Ghats, Northeastern Hills, the Shivaliks and the Gangetic Plain, and central and eastern parts of India. Only in these few pockets do you find the wild elephant population to be present. So, the first ever elephant census in India was conducted in 1929 during the colonial period under British India. This census was not a nationwide exercise. It was restricted only to the United Province, which is today's Uttar Pradesh, Bihar region, the Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Bihar belt, in the then United Provinces and the areas around it. This is where the first ever elephant census was carried out. But the methodology that was used was the traditional method of counting each elephant based on visual sighting. It did not adopt a diverse method of counting the elephants. It did not include any scientific methods of counting the elephants. The forest rangers and officers, with some help of volunteers and local community members, they would essentially try to spot the elephants, trying to keep a count. And this methodology, of course, would be flawed. It would never give you an accurate estimate. From 1929 till 1978, this was the methodology that was followed for elephant census in India. Even after independence, the same traditional method was followed. So, whatever numbers you get out of this census may not be very accurate. It would just be a rough estimation and it could be way off the mark. Either it could overestimate the number of elephants or it could grossly underestimate the number of wild elephants. So, from 1929 to 1978, such a rudimentary methodology was used in every periodic elephant census that was carried out. And also, more importantly, till 1990s, nationwide synchronized elephant census was never done. Before 1990s, elephant census was restricted to some regions and some landscapes only. But the launch of Project Elephant in 1992 changed the approach towards elephant conservation and elephant estimation in the country. A dedicated conservation program was rolled out by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and dedicated resources were aligned for conserving and protecting the elephant population. So, following this, India introduced synchronized elephant census in the early 2000s. Under the Manmohan Singh government, when there was heightened focus on conserving big species, threatened species such as tigers and elephants, a lot of streamlining of these programs was carried out. And the first ever synchronized All India elephant census was taken up in 2005, adopting a diverse methodology which could provide a slightly better estimate of the wild elephant population in India. So, apart from the direct count method, tracking based total count, counting the elephants at watering holes, and to ensure that there is no repetition or overlap, then even taking the dung samples and using it in the count methodology. These scientific estimations and sample methods were employed. And it was not just visual sighting of elephants, even camera traps have been deployed to come out with a much better estimate of the wild elephant population in the country. This methodology has been refined over the years. Such a synchronized All India Elephant Census was again carried out in 2010. The data was published in 2012, and the last elephant census was in 2017. But now the Wildlife Institute of India has further refined this methodology, and it has brought in DNA methodology as well to carry out DNA analysis of the dung samples which are collected. Apart from the direct count method, apart from the sampling method, and apart from counting the elephants at watering holes to ensure that the right count is taken, the dung sampling method, including DNA analysis, has been introduced to ensure that only unique elephants are counted and there is no overcounting or overlap. So this time, the numbers which are coming out of the data would be much, much more accurate compared to the previous years. So the Wildlife Institute of India has launched a new variant of this elephant census known as Synchronous All India Elephant Estimation, or SAI. So this exercise was conducted over a period of 4 years from 2021 to 2025. Because it's a very laborious task requiring a lot of manual effort, manual intervention, and it takes a lot of effort and computing mechanisms as well to essentially crunch the data and finally present the report. So, following 4 years of effort under the synchronous All India Elephant Estimation, Wildlife Institute of India has brought out the Status of Elephants in India report. So, what does the data say? How many wild elephants are found in our country? Let's look at the numbers. So, according to the synchronous All India Elephant Estimation, which is the data for 2025, 22,446 wild elephants have been recorded. Now, if you compare this with the 2017 data, in 2017, 29,964 elephants were recorded. And in the census before that, that is your 2010 census, for which data was published in 2012, there were a total of 29,976 elephants, somewhere in that range approximately. Now, if you look at the data from 2010 to 2017, the reduction in elephant population is very minimal. According to the estimates, the reduction in elephant numbers in this period was in the range of 12 to 87 elephants. So you can even ignore this as a very slight variation given the mismatch that might be there in the count method and the methodology that was used. But if you compare the previous data with the current data, the new data, there is a reduction of easily 7,500 elephants, close to approximately. So this is a massive drop in 8 years. But however, you can't read the data in such a simplistic manner. Experts are warning to not take the wrong signals from this. This does not mean that India has seen a sudden drastic fall in elephant population. Please understand the methodology used this time is much more accurate. It has used a diverse set of data through diverse collection methods. So this data should be treated independently without making any wrong comparisons with the old previous data. Maybe in 2010, 2017, same elephants were counted multiple times because the methodology did not include DNA analysis of the dung samples. It was not a well refined methodology that was used previously. So easily these numbers might have been overinflated. Maybe there was an overestimation of 5 to 6,000 elephants easily. So it would be wrong to compare the two data when the methodology used was completely different. So the SAI census data, which has been published now, it will serve as a new baseline for any future census because this census data is much, much more accurate. It has been developed through a refined methodology, which has a strong scientific basis. So, in the coming years, once in every 5 years, when the census is carried out going forward, the 2025 data would be much more accurate for a comparison. So, don't take the wrong interpretation from this. Don't assume that India has lost 7,000 to 8,000 elephants in just 8 years. That is not the right interpretation. The previous data might be flawed. There might have been a over or underestimation. So it is best to avoid such comparisons. And the Wildlife Institute of India has also given the same advisory. So the new census methodology under SAI will form a new baseline for elephant estimation and for comparison of data. Is that clear? Now, let's look at the distribution. This is what is important for your prelims, and I want all of you to pay attention. Please make a note of these points as well. For this particular census, Wildlife Institute of India had divided the entire country into cells and grids. The whole country was divided into cells and grids measuring 100 by 4 square kilometers, with each grid measuring approximately 100 by 4 square kilometers. So the whole country was divided in this manner, and then the task of estimating the elephants was taken up. And four landscapes were identified, four distinct vegetation zones were identified for this exercise. The first would be the Western Ghats belt. The Western Ghats, which includes Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. This region was classified as one landscape for the purpose of the census. Of course, Western Ghats extends into Goa, Maharashtra as well. But for the purpose of this census, Wildlife Institute of India had done this classification. So when they say Western Ghats landscape, it refers to only those elephants that were counted in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. This region holds the largest elephant population in the country, accounting for nearly 53% of the total wildlife elephant population. And which is the state with the highest elephant population in the country? Answer to this question is Karnataka. Karnataka has roughly more than 6,000 elephants which have been recorded in the wild. Karnataka has one of the best habitats for elephants, be it the Bandipur Nagarhole BRT Hills range, or be it the Badra and the Dandeli protected areas, right? And across the Malnad belt. India, in India, Karnataka happens to have one of the most healthiest elephant population with more than 6,000 wild elephants recorded. And Karnataka comes out at the top position. So as a result, Western Ghats accounts for 53%, more than 11,000 elephants out of the 22,000 that have been counted. They are found in Western Ghats in southern India. Tamil Nadu has around 3,000 plus elephants. Kerala has 2,000 odd elephants. See, you don't have to remember all the exact numbers. You don't have to by heart them. Know the approximate numbers. Know the top three states which have the highest elephant population. Such data is more than sufficient. Understand the region-wise distribution according to these landscapes. The second, after Western Ghats, would be the northeastern hills and the Brahmaputra floodplains. This covers the northeastern states, except for Sikkim, and northern Bengal, near Siliguri and the Darjeeling belt. So this landscape accounts for 22.22% of the elephant population. It comes second after the Western Ghats. In this region, Assam holds the highest elephant population with approximately 4,000 elephants. Is that clear? Then comes the Shivalik Gangetic Plains, which includes Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar. So this region accounts for roughly 9.18% of the elephants that were counted, with Uttarakhand having close to 1,700 plus elephants. Then central India and Eastern Ghats landscape. This basically covers Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Odisha, and southern part of West Bengal, including the Sundarbans. So this landscape accounts for 8.42% of the wild elephants that have been counted. So the top two states would be Karnataka followed by Assam. Is that clear? So this is some data that you need to remember. It could be useful for prelims. You need not mug up the numbers. You need not know the exact numbers. Just the rough estimation and the distribution as per the landscapes. This is more than sufficient. Now, what does this study tell us? What can we infer from this data? What's the interpretations that we can draw? The data tells us that incidents of human animal conflict has been rising. Now, you take Karnataka for example. Though Karnataka has the highest elephant population with more than 6,000 wild elephants, it reports the highest number of human animal conflict incidents as well due to growing urbanization, large scale deforestation. These are the threats that have been identified: urbanization, deforestation, then habitat fragmentation. Today, natural habitats are getting fragmented, they are getting broken up because of human activities. It could be because of public projects, linear projects such as building roads and railway lines or laying power cables. Then agricultural activities, large scale commercial plantation crops, which you often see in Western Ghats and also in Northeastern Hills, the coffee, tea plantations, then plantation crops like acacia, eucalyptus plantations, which are cultivated. They end up breaking the forest habitat and the elephant migratory corridors. I hope you know that elephants, the gentle giants, the mighty majestic animals, they are migratory in nature. They move across very large distances in large groups of herds. And whenever they face threats, when the risk increases for the herd, they tend to move away for a very long distance. They even move to a new habitat. So these increasing threat factors, because of urbanization, deforestation, habitat fragmentation, this is pushing the elephant population closer towards human habitations. They're moving to newer areas which were previously not colonized by elephants. For example, in Bannerghatta National Park on the outskirts of Bengaluru, which borders Tamil Nadu, there was a very healthy elephant population back in 1970s, 1980s. But as Bengaluru started urbanizing, then from the other side you have the Hosur region, the industrial belt of Tamil Nadu on the borders of Karnataka, which started expanding. This destroyed the habitat of Bannerghatta and the Hosur Dharmapuri forest division in Tamil Nadu. So as a result, multiple elephant herds, they moved away from this part of Bengaluru and Tamil Nadu and they migrated towards Andhra Pradesh, towards the Palamner Chittoor district, closer to the Tirupati Tirumala hills. And this sudden migration exposed elephants to newer human population who were not accustomed to dealing with elephants. Now, if you take, for example, the Hosur Dharmapuri belt in Tamil Nadu, the Banerghatta belt in Karnataka, or even the Bandipur and the Nagarhole belt in Karnataka and the Mudumalai Wayanad belt in Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Here, the local communities, which includes few tribes, forest dwelling tribes, they are accustomed to elephants. They know how to live with them. They know how to coexist. In fact, they even worship the elephants. But when suddenly large groups of herds moved towards Palamner Chittoor in 1980s, the people of Andhra Pradesh, they had not lived with elephants for the past 200 plus years. So this increased incidents of man-animal conflict. Several humans were killed as well. Elephants were killed as well. So this is one of the biggest risk factors which is present. The widespread commercial agricultural activity today, unchecked tourism, large-scale projects and linear projects, these are posing the biggest threat for elephant population in the country. Even in the Nilgiri belt towards the Coimbatore division in Tamil Nadu, similar risks are found. Over tourism in particular is a major threat. So it's very, very important to understand the patterns of man-animal conflict. For example, in the Coimbatore division, easily 150 people have been killed because of man-animal conflict incidents. 170 plus elephants have been killed as well. So even the local communities, farmers and the indigenous communities, they tend to get aggressive, especially when elephants destroy their crops, when they destroy uh, their standing crops, especially, or even when they storm into local villages. This results in financial loss. So sometimes local population will take it out on the elephants. They use electric fences, they dig trenches, and elephants often fall into them. They get electrocuted as well. So these risk factors are growing day by day because the governments are not stepping in at the right time. They need to spread awareness amongst the local community. They need to involve the local community in the conservation efforts, and especially indigenous knowledge would be extremely useful because forest dwelling tribes have lived with elephants for centuries. They know how to cohabit the same space, coexist without trampling on each other. So, this knowledge, the traditional indigenous knowledge, and ensuring that local communities are taken on board is very important. If there are incidents of man animal conflict, the government should immediately step in and provide compensation to the victims. If someone has lost their family member, or if standing crops or houses or shops are destroyed, the government has to compensate them so that the locals don't take it out on the elephants. So, such widespread conservation efforts are necessary, especially in places where there is a dense concentration of elephants, especially in the Western Ghats landscape, from Bandipur Nagarhole to BRT Hills in Karnataka, the Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary in Kerala, and the Mudumulai and the Nilgiri Ooty stretch in Tamil Nadu. It has a very rich density of elephants, and the increased urbanization and human activities is increasing the threat of man animal conflict. So, this is where such conservation efforts have to be focused upon. Even in the Shivalik Gangetic belt of UP and Uttarakhand, the same threat is present in the northeastern hills as well. So these steps have to be taken up immediately by the government, by the center, the states, and the environmental organizations to work with local communities, spread better awareness, use the indigenous knowledge, and dedicate more resources to protecting elephant habitats and the migratory corridors. So this is the key takeaway from this article. So based on this, you can anticipate a mains question as well. How was the synchronous All India elephant estimation conducted? What do the findings portend for elephant conservation in India? Examine. Portend is basically a futuristic estimation, and usually it has a negative connotation, meaning something bad is going to happen in the future. So the question is saying that how was the census conducted, and the data, does it have any negative findings, which basically brings up a warning for the future when it comes to elephant conservation? That's what the question is asking. So you can start your answer by talking about the role and distribution of elephants, right? You can point out how elephants are crucial in ecosystems, the role that they play, how they're revered in Indian culture. That is a point you can include as well. And one point about the historic range of elephants, their distribution across the subcontinent centuries ago, how their habitat has dwindled, how their population has gone down drastically. So, this will set the tone for your answer. Basically, you have to highlight that elephants are indeed endangered. They are threatened by humans. It's not the other way around. It's not humans being threatened by elephants. Humans have threatened elephants, and now, of course, that leads to incidents of man animal conflict. So, set the clear tone here, highlighting the role of elephants, the significance they occupy in our ecosystems, in our culture, and the historic range, and how the population has declined, and how today they are endangered on the IUCN Red List. Make it an elaborate paragraph, maybe 4 or 5 lines, where you explain this argument in the introduction. Then in the body, talk about the census history. One point about the way in which census was carried out from 1929 to 1978, how Project Elephant brought a better methodology, how census was carried out more regularly since 1990s. Every 5 years, the census was carried out, and the methodology has been further refined with a synchronous all India estimation, which has been done in 2005, 2010, 2017. So this will take one paragraph. Now you don't have to present the data here, not needed. Only for 2017, you can bring the data so that you can offer a comparison with the 2025 SAI data. Point out that Wildlife Institute of India has come out with a revised methodology which includes DNA sampling as well of the dung samples, giving a much more accurate estimate. But you need to say this data can't be compared because the methodologies are completely different. So the new data will become a baseline for the future estimates that will be carried out. Then provide the interpretation of this data. Interpretation. Explain the distribution. Take the four landscapes, point out the distribution from Western Ghats to Northeastern Hills to the Shivalik Gangetic Plains to Central Eastern parts of India. And once you highlight the distribution, point out Karnataka has the highest number of elephants. Then point out the risks that are present, the risks that have been noted during the census, and conclude your answer by highlighting the need for conservation. Focus on the local community, focus on the role of the forest department, how they can work with local population, use indigenous knowledge to conserve the elephant population and minimize the incidents of man-animal conflict. So this makes for a comprehensive answer, well-structured answer. Now let's move on to the other articles. On the front page, we have an article related to the right to marry a person of one's choice. A very important topic as far as fundamental rights are concerned. See, I'm taking up this topic because there is a related case. In Uttar Pradesh, recently there was an interfaith couple, a Muslim boy in love with a Hindu girl. And I'm sure you can estimate how controversial this must have been. The families, the society has stepped in. And according to reports, the father and the family of the girl, they abducted the couple with the help of the police. The police took the couple into custody, particularly the boy, because of societal pressure, the family pressure that was built. The matter eventually reached the court. The Allahabad High Court took up the matter and a habeas corpus petition was filed because the boy and girl were missing. They were abducted. So, through habeas corpus, the court can summon the body of those who have been detained, be it by the state or be it by anyone else. It's a basic writ petition which provides for guaranteeing and protecting your fundamental rights, particularly Article 21, your right to life and personal liberty. So once the couple were produced in the court, they informed the court that they eloped through a consensual relationship. Both agreed that they're in a consensual relationship, nobody is forcing them. And immediately the court stepped in and took the police to task. The court questioned, how can you do this in such a manner? This is completely illegal, blatantly illegal. No matter what is the social pressure, no matter what the parents are saying, the family, the relatives are saying, it's none of their business when it comes to the right to marry a person of one's choice. This is a matter which is clearly established in our legal precedents. The Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld that the right to marry a person of one's choice is a fundamental right guaranteed under Article 21, seen as an extension of right to personal liberty. So this is a right which can't be interfered with as long as the two adults are in a consensual relationship. Be it the state, the society, the family, the relatives, they have no business in interfering with your choice of a life partner. So this reminds me of some historic judgments. The Lata Singh case and the more recent Hadia case, Shafin Jahan case. In these cases, the Supreme Court has clearly established that the right to marry a person of one's choice is a part of your fundamental right under Article 21. It's a part of your personal liberty. The choice of a life partner is a very intimate choice that you're making. So this has to be an individual choice. So whatever the social norms are, the cultural norms are, they don't apply as long as the couple are not in a consensual relationship. Yes, in India, the norm is to have arranged marriages where families decide. But when it comes to a couple in love, if they are in a consensual relationship, no one else has the right to interfere. They may not support it, they may not support the couple, but that's a different matter altogether, right? That's again a family personal matter. But for the family to interfere with that and take the help of the police and police cooperating with this, the argument of the UP police was almost ridiculous in front of the court. That's why the Allahabad High Court took the police to task that there is no legal basis for you to go and detain a couple in a consensual relationship. So to this point, the police replied that the family had approached us asking for help, so we helped them. So the High Court, the Allahabad High Court has said this is even more illegal. Meaning the police is falling under societal pressure, being driven by societal norms, and essentially detaining the couple as well, helping the family abduct them. So this is where the courts have to take a firm stand, even hold the police accountable, because many such incidents keep coming up, be it in intercaste marriages, interfaith marriages. You might have heard of the horrific cases of honor killing, which is quite evident across the country. So the matter of right to marrying a person of one's choice is clearly established as a fundamental right of the individual as long as the two adults are in a consensual relationship. Be it the parents, the relatives, the society in general, the state, they have no role to play. They have no right to interfere with the person's right to marry someone of their choice. So, this is a very important point that you need to note down, the related cases as well, and how the judiciary has interpreted this. Despite this, the police often cross the line into illegality. They often fall under pressure and influence of the families and the society, and they end up helping these families sometimes to break up the relationship or even abduct the couple. So, this is something which is concerning. And on this, you can expect a basic standard question. The right to marry a person of one's choice is a fundamental right, and societal consent cannot impinge on this right. Discuss. It can be a 10-mark question or a 15-mark question. So the focus would be on explaining how this right is an extension of Article 21 under right to personal liberty. Next, yesterday a bandh was marked in Telangana. The whole state was marking a bandh where all the political parties, including the ruling Congress, had called for a bandh. Now, this is quite rare for the ruling party also to take part, which is in the government. It's quite rare. That's because this is related to the matter of reservation. Recently, the Telangana government brought out a policy to increase reservation for backward classes to 42% as far as local elections are concerned, to local civic bodies. The reservation for backward classes was increased to 42% by the state government and the legislative assembly. Now, this matter has been stayed by the Telangana High Court. Telangana High Court has stepped in, saying that you can't increase the reservation without a valid basis. You are breaching the 50% cap, which is seen as sacrosanct by the judiciary. So, what is this 50% cap? What's the history behind it? The 50% cap on reservation was brought out through the Indra Sawhney judgment, a landmark case when it comes to the policy of affirmative action. It's even known as the Mandal verdict, because in late 80s, the Mandal Commission's report was tabled, which provided for reservation for OBCs, other backward classes. Prior to this, reservation affirmative action it was limited to socially, educationally backward classes such as SCs and STs. So when OBC reservation faced a lot of opposition, it led to a lot of turmoil in the country as well. The matter reached the Supreme Court. In the Indra Sawhney judgment of 1992, the Supreme Court upheld the 27% reservation for OBCs that was recommended by the Mandal Commission. This was upheld as constitutional. As it was being provided on the grounds of social and educational backwardness, it was upheld as constitutionally valid. But however, the Supreme Court created some checks and balances to protect meritocracy and to ensure administrative efficiency in public employment in government jobs. The Supreme Court placed a cap, a 50% cap on reservations. That is the total reservation, including reservation given to SCs, STs, and OBCs, and any other reservation. It should not cross 50%. Plus, the Supreme Court defined the creamy layer concept. Those who have already benefited from the policy of affirmative action, right? They should not essentially keep receiving those benefits again and again. The benefits of reservation should trickle down to all the sections of SCs, STs, and OBCs. You should not end up creating elites within each backward class. So, for that, the creamy layer principle was introduced. So, only those in the non creamy layer would be eligible for reservation in jobs and in education, while excluding the creamy layer. The criteria for backwardness was clearly upheld by the Supreme Court, that only social educational backwardness can be the criteria. That's what the Constitution provides for. Look at Article 15. Clearly states on the grounds of social educational backwardness, reservation can be provided. The state can create a positive discrimination and provide for social upliftment and mobility to ensure social justice to historically oppressed and backward communities. The Supreme Court also held in the Indra Sawhney judgment that in terms of promotions, this reservation concept may not automatically apply. The 50% cap and the extension of the reservation may not automatically apply unless extended. The Supreme Court basically was arguing that once reservation is applied at the entry level, right, when people are entering government services, providing reservation in promotions is not an automatic derivative of it. But of course, later it has been extended to promotions as well. And economic criteria was stated not to be the sole criteria by the Supreme Court, that you can't use economic criteria, economic backwardness alone, because the whole basis of this social mobility, which was provided by the Constitution, was to ensure social justice, meaning it should benefit mainly the socially marginalized, educationally marginalized communities, the lower castes, which were historically oppressed in the Indian society by the upper castes. They should be benefited. So economic criteria could not be the sole criteria. But of course, this was later amended when the EWS reservation was introduced. When economic criteria was used as the sole criteria to provide for that additional 10% reservation, right? This was overridden and Supreme Court has upheld EWS reservation. So this is what the Supreme Court had observed in the Mandal verdict in the Indra Sawhney judgment when the 50% cap on reservation was placed. But this cap has been breached by many states, by many governments, right? Because as you know, the quota policy has become a vote bank for ruling governments and political parties. From Tamil Nadu to Maharashtra, in many states, the reservation cap has been breached by stating that there is data to back up the argument that these communities are still backward. So, on this basis, governments have been able to extend reservation repeatedly, right? But the matter comes up for judicial scrutiny, and the courts do step down on it, and they do ensure that any further increase is prevented. But if there is enough data, enumeration data, which is available to argue that the community is truly backward, and if reservation is to be provided to them, on that justification, there are cases where the 50% cap has been breached. It has been upheld by the courts as well. Next, a very important development with regard to environment ecology and international relations. The IMO, International Maritime Organization. I'm sure you would have heard of this international organization. So first, let's talk about the IMO, and then we'll discuss what the topic is about. The International Maritime Organization, it is a UN agency, a specialized agency of the United Nations. It was established in 1948. It's headquartered in London, and it is mainly responsible for creating international standards and regulations for the maritime sector to regulate global shipping. So it's responsible for maritime safety, for protecting the marine environment from the pollution caused by ships. It's also responsible for all the legal matters that arises due to global shipping. So the IMO is one of the most important international institutions. It's part of the UN system. It's a specialized agency of the UN. It consists of 176 member states and 3 associate members. And it has an assembly which meets once in every 2 years. The member countries, they come together at the IMO assembly to basically push for any reforms and changes and take stock of global shipping standards. And it is administered by a body. It is administered by a council that consists of 40 member countries which are elected within the assembly. Out of the 176 member states, 40 countries are elected to be part of the council which administers the IMO. So these are some basic facts about the role, composition, and the mandate of IMO for your prelims. Now, IMO was working on a framework to cut down greenhouse gas emissions from the marine shipping industry and to move the industry towards clean energy, to cut the use of fossil fuels and achieve net zero emissions. This was a very ambitious goal the IMO had set for itself. Earlier this year, in April 2025, IMO countries had agreed to create a green framework known as the carbon emissions framework, the 2050 framework, 2030 framework. Many different informal names have been used to describe this. Some refer to it as the 2050 framework as well, because the goal under this new framework was to achieve net zero emissions from the shipping industry by the middle of the century. There's also a goal by 2030 to reduce the emissions intensity from global shipping by 40%, to basically bring down the CO2 emissions, the emission intensity by 40% by the end of this decade. So, all these emission reduction standards were being incorporated into this global framework, which would be mandatory on all the member states. So, in April, the framework had been finalized and it had been supported by 63 countries, including India. All the EU members, the 27 members of European Union, had supported this framework. And major shipping countries like India, Brazil, Canada, Japan and South Korea, China, all these countries had supported this framework. It was supposed to come up for voting in October, and it was supposed to take effect from 2027 onwards. The framework would come into force by 2027, which would push the shipping industry to move away from fossil fuels, adopt clean energy, and bring down emissions from the shipping industry, and eventually achieve net zero emissions by the middle of the century. This was the overall framework which the countries had finalized. But United States under Donald Trump has been strongly opposing these measures. As you know, Donald Trump is a climate skeptic. In fact, most of the Republican Party and the far right wing ideology in the US has been climate skeptic. They genuinely believe climate change is a global conspiracy. They call it a scam. If you don't believe me, look at what Trump is posting on social media. So the other day, IMO assembly meet was taking place. The member countries were supposed to vote on this framework. If it was passed, it would have come into force by 2027. So before this assembly meeting in London, Donald Trump started posting on social media, on Truth Social especially. And if you read the statements of Donald Trump, some of you might be shocked. Trump calls this framework a global green scam. He says this will bring unnecessary restrictions on the shipping industry. It will restrict the fossil fuel industry. And he says this is bad for economies, it is bad for business. He has called out the countries which were supporting the framework. And the Trump administration started threatening all of them individually. This is pure blackmail tactics in geopolitics. I'm sure you're aware. US has quit the Paris Agreement under Donald Trump. Not once, but twice. During the first presidency of Trump, US had exited the Paris Agreement, which is the only climate agreement we have under the UN Climate Change Convention. But after the Biden administration came to power, US had rejoined the Paris Agreement. But now when Trump came back for the second term, US has again exited the Paris Agreement, and Trump insists on calling climate change a global conspiracy as a scam, which is designed to somehow target the US economy. So, based on this logic or illogic of Trump, his followers and supporters, US not only quit the Paris Agreement, but US was now threatening each and every country in IMO which were supporting the new framework, the GHG reduction framework. So US has threatened the European members. It has threatened India, China, Japan, Canada, all of them, saying US will take drastic action against them if they support this framework. So this blackmail by the US led to a log jam at the IMO voting. The proposal was not moving forward. Things were getting very hostile. So then Singapore stepped in with a proposal to delay the framework for 1 year. Maybe Singapore is hoping Trump may not complete his term, or by at least another 2 years, Trump would be out of his way. But Singapore pushed for a proposal to delay voting on this framework for 1 year, and Saudi Arabia called for a vote on this proposal of Singapore. So instead of voting to accept this framework, the vote turned into delaying the framework by 1 more year. Next year, they'll decide whether it should be brought into effect or not. So, apart from US, major oil producing and oil exporting nations like Saudi Arabia and Russia, they also oppose the IMO framework because obviously it will hurt their fossil fuel exports. Their position is understandable to some extent, but US position is purely illogical. But anyways, Saudi Arabia, which pushed for a vote on the delay proposal, which was made by Singapore, it got the support of enough number of countries. More than 50 countries voted to delay the framework itself. So this ambitious IMO framework has now been postponed to next year. So next year, the countries will review again whether they should vote on this new framework to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases from the global shipping industry. So this is likely to have a disastrous impact as far as climate change, global warming is concerned. The more we delay the reduction of emissions, right, the science is very clear behind this. Rising sea levels will pose a serious threat, a possible existential threat for many countries and many island nations. Small island countries like Vanuatu, Maldives, they've all criticized the US for blocking the IMO framework because these are the nations which will suffer the full impact. So, nevertheless, India has basically taken the side of the other countries like Japan, China, and European powers. They all fell under American pressure. So did India. It's not clear as to how India voted exactly, but most likely the Hindu says India essentially voted for delaying the proposal itself. So let's wait for some clarity as to how India exactly voted. But most reports are, as of now, stating that India most likely voted for delaying the proposal. So coming to the next article, Pakistan and Taliban, which were at conflict, they have agreed for a ceasefire which was mediated by Qatar. This is a new breaking development. See, this is a topic we have covered several times in the past few days, right? Pakistan Taliban had agreed for a 48-hour ceasefire over the last week. The hostilities had temporarily stopped. But yesterday and day before yesterday, Pakistan, as usual, broke its commitment. Pakistan is a country known for breaking its promises. It broke the ceasefire and launched major attacks against Afghanistan, especially in the Spin Boldak sector, which is a very important border crossing point along the Durand line. So, civilian targets were hit by Pakistan, and you might have heard 3 Afghan cricketers also have been killed from the national cricket team. It's a tragic loss for Afghanistan. The Afghan Cricket Board has even withdrawn from the upcoming T20 Tri Series, which included Pakistan. Things have become really hostile between the two countries. And following the escalation, both Pakistan and Taliban agreed to renegotiate the ceasefire. And this time, Qatar acted as a neutral mediator. Qatar has always been working with Taliban. It has good links with the Taliban. In fact, when US negotiated with Taliban and worked out the peace agreement in order to remove the US troops from Afghanistan, it was Qatar which was the mediator. The peace agreement between US Taliban is called the Doha Peace Agreement of 2020. The exit of US was facilitated because of this agreement, which was pushed by the then President Donald Trump, who directly negotiated with Taliban and struck a deal, and Qatar was the mediator. So Qatar has great links with the Taliban leadership. It still allows Taliban to maintain a political representation in Doha. So here, Pakistan's defense minister carried a delegation with him to talk to the Taliban side, and with the involvement of Turkey and reportedly with the involvement of Saudi Arabia. Two countries have agreed to implement a long-lasting ceasefire. Just few hours back, today early morning, reports have come in that Pakistan Taliban have finalized a renewed ceasefire which was mediated by Qatar, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia. So this is a key development that you should note down. So they have just agreed for an immediate ceasefire to take effect. So hopefully this should bring some stability back because you can't afford such chaos in such a critical region. In the AFPAC region, you have multiple terrorist radical organizations which are already operating. You have the TTP, which is posing a threat to Pakistan, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, right? The Pakistan branch of Taliban. In fact, this is one of the prime reasons why Pakistan is targeting the Afghan Taliban today. Pakistan accuses Afghan Taliban of sheltering Pak Taliban and giving a safe haven to them. Then you also have the threat of Islamic State, Khorasan province, ISIS KP, which has been spreading its wings both on both sides of the Durand line in Afghanistan and as well as in Pakistan. So, if the conflict continues and the region is further destabilized, it could create a fertile ground for such terrorist outfits to flourish. We saw how the Islamic State rose in Iraq and Syria in 2014. It exploited the power vacuum in Iraq and Syria as a result of the conflict, the civil war that was present. And that's how the ISIS came into being. So, to avoid such possibilities, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey have worked with Pakistan and Taliban to bring out a ceasefire between them. But let's see how long it can last because Pakistan is a country which can't be trusted. And again, you never know what Afghan Taliban would do in the coming days. At least for now, a ceasefire has been declared. But what is more concerning for India is reported in this article. The Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir is back to issuing threats to India. And please note, this is not the first time he's doing it. This is the second time he's brought up a serious threat against India, that to a nuclear threat. I hope you remember what happened last time when Asim Munir had issued a similar threat in April 2025. Just a few days later, we witnessed the brutal Pahalgam terror attack. Many experts and analysts saw a direct link, a causal linkage between the threat statements of Asim Munir when he spoke about Kashmir being the jugular vein of Pakistan, when he spoke about the fundamental differences between Hindus and Muslims, India and Pakistan, unnecessarily creating a communal divide. And these threats eventually resulted in the Pahalgam terror attack, and many experts saw a direct causal link between the two. This time, Asim Munir has again issued a threat stating that any minor provocation from India would invite a decisive response from Pakistan. He has warned India to not take a risk when there is a nuclearized environment, pointing towards Pakistan's nuclear weapons. Pakistan's allegation is that India is behind the Taliban today. Pakistan is making this ridiculous argument, this accusation that India is using Taliban as a proxy. See, until now, it was accusing India of sponsoring TTP, the Pakistan Taliban. Now they are accusing India of sponsoring Afghan Taliban as well. See, there is no basis for these accusations. India has repeatedly denied these allegations. Pakistan has never been able to present even a shred of evidence to link Indian intelligence agencies with any branch of Taliban, be it the TTP or the Afghan Taliban with which we have become closer recently. So this is a regular Pakistani narrative, a propaganda which is built up. But of course, you can't take it lightly. Statements coming from the army chief, right, who has now declared himself as the field marshal, will carry certain weight and it could possibly indicate as to how things would develop in the coming months between India and Pakistan. So this shows the heightened tensions which are still present between the two countries. Next, Donald Trump again in the news, creating problems for India again. First, he kept on claiming he was the one who mediated the ceasefire between India and Pakistan by threatening them with tariffs. India kept on denying that repeatedly. Right? Pakistan acknowledges it. Pakistan has nominated him for the Nobel Prize twice. But this time it's not about the ceasefire claim. It's about a different claim. He's saying that PM Modi has agreed to cut Russian oil imports under American pressure. As you're aware, the US has now levied 50% tariffs on India, right? And 25% of this tariff is a penalty on India for importing Russian oil. Washington's argument is that India is funding Russia's war in Ukraine by being one of the biggest buyers of Russian oil. So this is an allegation that we deny. We don't deny buying Russian oil, but we are exposing the Western hypocrisy. We are not the only ones buying Russian oil. There is China, which is a bigger buyer of Russian oil, and European countries. They still have a large trade relationship with Russia, amounting to billions of dollars. They are still importing Russian LNG, even as early as last year. So, what hypocrisy is this? Right? Western countries themselves are trading with Russia, importing Russian energy as well, Russian goods and services. So, how can US target India? This is India's point. India has called such tariffs and pressure tactics as unfair, unreasonable, unjustified. But Trump has been claiming repeatedly over the last few days that PM Modi has personally told him that India is cutting oil imports from Russia. Now, how true is this? Or again, is Trump just lying? Or is he just exaggerating? But if you look at the facts Trump is quoting, you know that Trump is not a guy for facts, right? He has said India bought 38% of its oil from Russia, which is not factually correct. It's not entirely correct, right? But as I said, Trump is not a person to get the facts right. But that aside, the point is India truly reducing oil imports from Russia? The signs are definitely there. There are clear signs that public companies have indeed reduced procurement of Russian energy in the past few months after Trump came into office. Indian Oil Corporation and ONGC and other public companies have indeed reduced the offtake of Russian oil into India. But however, the private companies of India, Reliance, then Nayara Energy, which is a joint venture between India and Russia, they have continued with the procurement of Russian oil. But you can definitely see a sign that India's procurement of Russian oil has declined in the last few months. Though India denies any direct link between American pressure and the decision to reduce the procurement of Russian oil, there is some evidence to what Trump is saying. But India's argument is that there are other sources available. It's not that we have to buy only from Russia. Today, oil prices have become very stable, right? India is saying we are diversifying our oil sources. So we are slightly reducing our dependency on Russian oil and looking for other reliable sources. That is India's argument. But Trump is claiming credit for this, and he's saying that India has fallen under his pressure tactics and PM Modi has agreed to cut oil imports from Russia. So this statement that repeatedly comes from Trump is as problematic as the ceasefire claims that he keeps on making. It essentially puts a shadow on India's independent foreign policy. The principle of strategic autonomy has been the bedrock of our foreign policy. So now concerns are coming up whether India is truly falling under American pressure. Are we taking decisions against our national interests? Or is the government still standing up? Right? Only time will tell. Next, the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, also known as the Iran nuclear deal, has expired. Iran has said it has no commitments anymore under the nuclear deal of 2015. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was signed between US and Iran in the presence of the P5 plus 1 countries. These are the signatories to the JCPOA. Iran is party to it, and the P5 plus 1 countries, which includes US, UK, France, Russia, and China. And the plus 1 here refers to Germany, representing European Union. Even the EU was party to it. These were the stakeholders in the Iranian nuclear deal that was signed in 2015 that reduced the tensions between US and Iran. Prior to this, US was looking to bomb Iran and its nuclear facilities to prevent Iran from procuring nuclear weapons. US had placed crippling sanctions on Iran as well. Tensions were really high between the two countries at that point. So to ease the tensions and to prevent a war, European countries and Russia, China intervened along with European Union and Germany, and they negotiated the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. So under the deal, Iran agreed on several cutbacks to its nuclear program. It agreed to immediately stop the nuclear enrichment. It agreed to stop its nuclear centrifuges and stop all the enrichment which was being undertaken and transfer the enriched uranium to European countries, hand over the enriched uranium, and in return get assistance in civilian nuclear technology from Britain, France, and Germany. And US promised to lift the sanctions for Iran curbing its nuclear enrichment activities and handing over the enriched stockpile and basically putting a stop on its weapons program. US would lift the sanctions and European powers, they would assist Iran with civilian nuclear technology. This was the deal. But Donald Trump again in 2018 quit the Iran nuclear deal. So Trump is a quitter, known for quitting agreements after agreements. So in 2018, during Trump's first presidency, Trump, who's known to be having a pro-Israel bias in his foreign policy, right? He walked out of the Iran nuclear deal, alleging that Iran was still secretly building nuclear weapons. Though there was no evidence to back this up. Even the other partners in the deal, like UK, France, who were American allies, they denied that Iran was breaking the commitments. Even the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, which was monitoring Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities, it stated that Iran is still abiding by the deal and it has not broken the terms. But despite this, US exited the agreement and Trump imposed crippling sanctions on Iran. So this pushed Iran further away, and Iran also eventually refused to follow the commitments and started it basically restarted the enrichment. And that is what led to the recent military strikes as Iran was accelerating the enrichment program. Israel US carried out joint airstrikes, one after the other, targeting Iran's nuclear facilities. So this deal has almost fallen apart. It had already fallen apart. Iran had broken the commitments because of the American threats and hostility. And now the deal itself has expired. It had a sunset clause, it had an expiry date. So deal itself has expired. So Iran, Russia, China have said we have no longer any commitments under the deal. So no deal between US and Iran is very risky for the region. If Iran were to try and rebuild its nuclear weapons program, most likely US will look for ways with Israel to target the nuclear program, which could bring more instability to West Asia. Now, coming to the prelim section, let's take a quick look at the small topics in today's paper. On page 9, there's an article referring to the Kurinji blooms, the violet colored flower bloom which is seen in the Nilgiri part of the Western Ghats. In the Nilgiri ranges around the Ooty Coimbatore belt. You find this in parts of Kerala, some parts of Karnataka as well, right? But don't confuse the Kurunji bloom with the Neela Kurunji. Both are slightly different. Though they are related species, they are two different types of flowering plants. The Neela Kurinji, which gives the classic purple blue color and the hue to the Nilgiri mountains, right? The range itself is named as Nilgiri on the color blue, the purplish bluish hue, which is because of primarily the Neela Kurinji flowers, which bloom once in 12 years. But here, what you see in the image is not Neela Kurinji. The article is referring to Kurinji bloom, which is slightly different. Neela Kurinji bloom, which blooms in 12 years, is found in higher altitudes, above 1,300 meters, right? In the Shola grasslands of Western Ghats. This is where you find the Neela Kurinji flowering plant, and it blooms once in 12 years, which is a spectacle to witness, right? And the thing is, these flowering plants, they are a indicator of climate change as well. They have a very important ecological environmental role. Now, the Kurunji bloom referred here in the article, which is seen in Gudalur, this refers to a slightly different type of a flowering plant. They are present in lower altitudes, altitudes lesser than 1,300 meters. Okay, and they are also found in the upper grasslands of the Western Ghats. But Neela Kurunji is right at the top, about 1,300 meters in altitude, whereas Kurunji blooms slightly, they occur below that in the mid level altitudes of the Western Ghats. Now, these flowers, they bloom once in 8 years. This species of flowering plant, it blooms once in 8 years. The scientific name of Kurinji is Strobilanthes sessilis. It has a violet hue compared to the purplish blue hue of the Neela Kurinji. So the colors are slightly different. The blooming season is different. The altitude where they are found is also slightly different. Clear? I'll repeat the point. Let's summarize this. Neela Kurinji is found at the higher altitudes, at the top Shola grasslands, about 1,300 meters in altitude. It has a purplish blue hue, which gives the characteristic bluish color to the Nilgiri mountains. In slightly lower altitudes, you find the Kurinji bloom, which blooms once in 8 years, which has a violet hue, and they occur in slightly mid to lower altitudes below 1,300 meters. Now, these flowering plants, which bloom once in 8 to 12 years in a cycle, They are an indicator of climate change because they bloom only when the right conditions are present. They're very sensitive to environmental changes. If, let's say, there is pollution, if there is large scale tourism or destruction of the local habitat, in any such pressure conditions, if there is such stress factors present, these flowers, they don't bloom properly. So if the bloom doesn't occur, like a almost like a carpet, it's a clear sign of the impact of pollution and climate change. So it's an indicator of climate change and pollution. So if the bloom occurs in a healthy manner, right, it's seen as a sign of good, clean environment present over there. Now, these flowering plants are endemic to Western Ghats. They're not found anywhere else in the world. That's why it becomes a big attraction for tourists as well, right? So please note down these basic facts. They bloom only under favorable conditions. It's quite similar to the blooming of the bamboos, right? The some species of bamboo, they bloom only once in 40, 50, 60 years, right? So it's one life cycle. Immediately after the blooming, they essentially drop the seeds and the plant will die. So this cyclical blooming which occurs is a ecological and cultural phenomena. All right. Now coming to the next topic, again from environment ecology, the Indian wolf is in the news. The Indian wolf was previously categorized as a subspecies under the grey wolf, which is found across Asia. This is how the IUCN had designated the Indian wolf previously. It was seen as a subspecies under grey wolf itself, but now IUCN has almost decided to recognize the Indian wolf as a new species altogether. Based on new research and scientific and genetic data, the Indian wolf is now being separately categorized and it will be listed on the red list as vulnerable. The Indian wolf is also threatened. It's a threatened species. So on the IUCN red list, it would be listed as vulnerable. It already enjoys protection under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. Is that clear? So please remember the conservation status and the protection accorded to this important animal. The Indian wolf is often found in shrublands and grasslands, particularly in semi-arid ecosystems. This is where you find the Indian wolf to be dominant. In parts of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, parts of Karnataka as well, interior Telangana, Andhra Pradesh. So in the semi-arid scrublands, grasslands, this is where the Indian wolf has dominated. A key species in the food chain that keeps a check on the prey base, that plays a pivotal role in the entire food chain. But they face increased threats because of urbanization, deforestation, destruction of habitat, sometimes hunting and poaching as well. Rarely these wolves attack humans. They usually stay away from attacking humans. Till date in India, there are only two recorded incidents where the wolf has attacked a human being. So it's very rare for them to attack humans. They're not a threat for humans at all. But they are known to attack cattle, right? When they run short of prey, which is the case today because of habitat destruction, the wolves basically try to reach out to nearby villages, nearby habitations. They target the sheep, the dogs, or the cattle which is present. And as a result, the local villagers will end up targeting the wolves. So this has become a increased risk factor. But killing the wolf is strictly prohibited under law with a very strict punishment, including a jail term, because it's a protected species under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. So now IUCN recognizing it as a separate species and placing it as vulnerable on the red list will accord better protection for the Indian wolf. So you can see here on the red list of IUCN, Indian wolf is listed as vulnerable. Coming to the last topic from art and culture, in the supplement pages of the Hindu, you find these colorful images from Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, where a festival is celebrated at the start of the winter season. In the September, October months, right at the start of the winter season, a very unique festival is celebrated by the women, particularly in the state of Telangana. It's more a feature seen in the state of Telangana. So it's a festival associated with femininity as well. So this festival basically marks the connection of humans with Mother Nature, the connection with water, wind, etc. And it's a practice where women, they handcraft these flower stalks. They build it like a bouquet. They use colorful flowers to build it like a stalk, which they offer to Mother Nature, and they basically highlight the connection, the feminine energy which connects Mother Nature with the human beings. The role it plays in agriculture is also equally important. So this unique festival is called Bathukamma, the Bathukamma festival. It is usually celebrated as a 9-day event that roughly coincides with the Navratri season. It starts on the day of Pitru Amavasya, Mahalaya Amavasya, ends on the Durgashtami day. Okay. So the festival basically involves a lot of singing, dancing as well. And it's primarily performed by women. And women make these handcrafted flower stalks that they offer to Mother Nature. So there's a big demand for flowers during this season, especially marigold flowers. And farmers benefit from this. Farmers cultivate marigold just for the festive season, for the Bathukama season. That brings additional revenue for the farmers in this region. So there is a Guinness record held by the Bathukama festival and the organizers of the festival for creating the world's largest flower stalk, which was handcrafted by the participants. So this is part of the rich history, the culture of Telangana. And again, it's a celebration of our environment, a celebration of nature itself. Plus, it highlights the feminine divinity as well. So that's the symbolic value and importance of this festival. So, on this note, I bring my discussion to an end. If you like the session, do press the like button and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So, before we end the class, again, I'm wishing all of you a very happy Diwali. But we will continue to bring the daily Hindu analysis even during the festive period. So, take care, all the best, and have a safe Diwali.